Oh, I mean, we're super early. We're very, very early. I mean, this is like we're at the beginning of probably a 20-year journey of massively high returns. It's going to be, we're going to have massively high returns for 20 or maybe even 30 years. That's basically, I think, where we are. You're at the beginning, like you're in the first inning. If you're in your under 30, you got 30 years to retire. One Bitcoin in 30 years will be enough for you to retire. Clock starts when the institutional money comes in. And I feel like that's where we are with Bitcoin. The clock has started on this new thing. When are we going to get to Bitcoin 1 million? I would say probably 10 years from now, somewhere between 5 years from now. I mean, there's some people saying this year, right? It's possible, right? So whatever your plan is, you got to make sure that you do not sell more than 20% of your Bitcoin for the next 10 years.
Fred Krueger begins by addressing Bitcoin's potential as a generational wealth vehicle, particularly for young investors under 30. According to him, owning just one Bitcoin today could provide financial independence and even fund retirement within the next 30 years. This projection stems from Bitcoin's limited supply. Only 21 million coins will ever exist. For individuals in their 40s or older, Fred suggests adjusting expectations and accumulating larger holdings to meet retirement goals. He emphasizes that time is a critical factor in realizing Bitcoin's potential, as its value appreciates significantly over decades. For those in their 50s or 60s, Fred recommends aiming for higher stakes, such as owning 30 to 40 Bitcoins, to secure financial security in retirement.
Please take a little time to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications for more videos like this. You can also check out our other videos on cryptocurrencies and the overall digital asset space and drop your comments and observations in the comments section below. Everything you do helps with the YouTube algorithm and immensely contributes to the channel's growth. Thanks and enjoy the video.
100 grand sounds like a lot of money when you're poor. But I would say one Bitcoin, if you're in your under 30, you got 30 years to retire. One Bitcoin in 30 years will be enough for you to retire, I think. So I think just one Bitcoin is the answer. And, by definition, only 21 million people in this entire planet will ever get to one Bitcoin, and probably a lot less than that, right? It may be as little as 5 million people will ever get to one Bitcoin. Right now, you have about 1 million people who are at one Bitcoin, and I think the number, the sort of the max, I would say, is 5. I would say, yeah. So I think if you're in your 40s or something, you don't have that kind of time frame. So I think the number there is more like 10 Bitcoin. Again, you still need to kind of hold on to it for a while, and if you're in your 50s or 60s, I mean, somewhere around 30, 40 Bitcoin, I think, is kind of what you really need. You know what I mean? It's not 10 anymore, right? 10's a little cutting it a little close. If you're 50 or 60, I think. And so, even if you're talking about borrowing against whatever, I think those are sort of the ranges, I would say. Yeah. Bitcoin 1 million, Bitcoin 10 million, right?
Yeah.
All right. When are we going to get to Bitcoin 1 million? I would say probably 10 years from now, somewhere between 5 years from now. I mean, there's some people saying this year, right? It's possible, right? But somewhere, I would say, somewhere in the 5 to 10 range, right? I think that's kind of the likelihood for 1 million. Where are we going to get to 10 million? Probably around 20 years from now, you're going to get to 10 million. It might be 30 years from now, right? So that kind of time range. And that's kind of what the power law tells you, right? So the power law quantifies this stuff very well for you. It's not going to be like, we need this strategic reserve, or we need this Saudi sheikh to buy it. This thing's just going to work. this thing will just work, and it will work. And really, you gotta just extend your time frame to about a decade. And I think you got to figure out, okay, how do I make sure that I have Bitcoin, my core position, throughout this decade? So whatever your plan is, you got to make sure that you do not sell more than 20% of your Bitcoin for the next 10 years. So you got that 20% you can play around with. You can do whatever you want. But keep 80%. As long as you keep 70 or 80%, the numbers are going to be amazing for you.
Yeah.
All of us old timers are going to be really, I think, are going to really benefit from just the pure growth factor. And I think that the key is just to kind of keep a level head and stay calm and understand that there will be volatility, and fine. We're okay with it. If you bought Bitcoin at 500 and it goes from 100,000 to 50,000, it hurts a little bit. But it's not a panic attack, right? On the other hand, if you went huge all in right now at 100,000 and it sort of ticks down to 50,000, that's kind of that's where you do have panic attacks at that point. So I think it gets easier as you're older, as you're further into this, right? It definitely gets easier. I mean, we're super early. We're very, very early. I mean, this is like we're the beginning of probably a 20-year journey of massively high returns. It's going to be, we're going to have massively high returns for 20 or maybe even 30 years. That's basically, I think, where we are. So, you're nowhere. You're at the beginning, like you're in the first inning. So I think you're not at all late. And there's something very fractally about Bitcoin that it kind of like, in a way, 2024 Bitcoin was never cheap.
Fred offers a candid critique of real estate as an investment compared to Bitcoin. He argues that real estate, while traditionally considered a safe asset, pales in comparison to Bitcoin's potential returns over the next decade. He advises caution against overcommitting to real estate, particularly in a market he views as overvalued relative to Bitcoin. For young investors just starting out, Fred suggests prioritizing Bitcoin accumulation over taking on mortgage debt. He reasons that Bitcoin's future valuation, potentially reaching $1 million or more, makes it a far superior asset for wealth creation. For those with substantial Bitcoin holdings, however, diversifying into real estate may make sense to achieve a balanced portfolio.
People are going to look at the audited results of IBIT. They're not going to look at what Bitcoin did before IBIT. They're going to look at what happened after the ETF came out, after they could finally buy it. They could first buy it. And that's it. So I think we're in for a very long ride, a really long ride. And that's the main thing I want to say is, like, you've been in Bitcoin a long time, but you've only been in institutional Bitcoin the same long time as anybody else, 1 year, because everything you did before that, it's sort of like, it's like a VC when they invest in a company. They view that the time starts when they invest. Like whatever happened before that, whatever the founders did before, it doesn't matter. Clock starts when the institutional money comes in. And I feel like that's where we are with Bitcoin. The clock has started on this new thing. And the last thing you want to do is use your models from the previous era to kind of project the next era. But those models are not going to work anymore. Like you may think, oh, well, it's going to do this, the mining this, the cycles. Oh, great. You sold in, and you want to kind of time it so better than anybody else. So you're going to sell in August of this year. Great. You're going to sell in August. You're going to be up 60%, 70%. And you're going to think you're going to miss the crash of 2026, except there won't be a crash of 2026. And there won't be a crash of 2027. And, it'll just keep on going up. So, all I know is I'm not smart enough to say that I think 2026 is going to be a down year. So I'm definitely hodling through from here on out. And I think the biggest question you have to ask yourself is, do you want to take the plunge and actually have a mortgage and real estate? And that's really the question. And I think in many cases, the answer is, for somebody like you who's been in Bitcoin for a while, I think maybe the answer is yes, you do want to get some real estate. But I'd say if you're just starting out, and I would say I would suggest stacking would be a better idea right now than jumping into mortgage on what is kind of an overpriced asset, really. I think real estate's not going to do very well relative to Bitcoin. I really don't think it will. And so, I think you have to think about yourself as 10 years from now, when Bitcoin's at $1 million, how smart is that house or that condo going to look? And I'd say probably not too smart. I don't think you're going to see another thing like Bitcoin likely in your life. You might see it, but you're not going to get it on the ground floor like you did with Bitcoin. And you got lucky. We all got lucky. Our eyes were opened at the right time. If 100 Bitcoin gives you the absolute peak lifestyle forever, starting now, well, maybe you scale it down from there to like 30 Bitcoin or 25 Bitcoin. You should be able to live off that today, right? And so, now, of course, all this stuff is easier said than done because you have to have this crazy belief in Bitcoin and not panic sell it at the absolute worst point. But what I'm trying to say is that those feelings are all, the feeling that you had in 2016 is the same feeling that some new guy is going to have in 25, now, looking at $100,000 Bitcoin. It doesn't matter. You're very, very early. This is less than 1% of rich people even have any Bitcoin. So we're tremendously early. There's going to be a lot of great gains, but it's going to be Bitcoin only. Just and don't try to time it. I mean, that's the main thing. Everybody who's trying to time it is going to screw up, in my opinion. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's kind of
My
gut feel is they're going to screw up.
Fred concludes by reaffirming his belief in Bitcoin's unparalleled potential. He emphasizes that Bitcoin represents a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to participate in the rise of a transformative financial technology. With less than 1% of wealthy individuals currently holding Bitcoin, the asset remains in its infancy, offering tremendous upside for those willing to commit for the long haul. He cautions against attempting to time the market, as even seasoned investors often fail in this endeavor. Instead, Fred advocates for a steadfast HODL, hold on for dear life approach, allowing investors to ride out short-term volatility and capitalize on long-term gains.